And beyond the topic that we're going to be getting into today, which, as it's written, is Ascension, Unity, Praise, Selflessness, and Joy in Baal HaSulam's, that's Kabbalist Yehuda Ashlag's, his 5 longest melodies, or Nigunim. So we're putting this together more because this marks the completion of a project of recording the complete set of the Nigunim, of the melodies, by Kabbalist Yehuda Ashlag, that's Baal HaSulam, mostly by him, but also of his son and disciple, who was also the teacher of our teacher here at the B'nai Baruch Kabbalah Education and Research Institute, which is Rabash, that is Kabbalist Baruch Shalom Halevi Ashlag. Today, by the way, marks his Memorial Day. And also of Baal HaSulam's teacher from Pursov. At least all the Nigunim and melodies that we know of coming from these sources. So it's right after this Kabbalah Explained Simply, we're gonna premiere this set of Nigunim on a video that we'll link to right here in the description, in the chat, and you'll be welcome to go there while we're playing through those Nigunim in that premiere. So we'll also be there with you on chat. We'll be sending you some workshop questions that you can think about, that you can answer there, and it'll be kind of like a listening party for this project. So what we're doing here is more like an introduction to premiering that complete set of Nigunim in piano arrangements. And we'll say a few words about each one. We'll also read the texts of each one. It's something we haven't done with the Nigunim that we've discussed to date, which if you haven't watched those ones, we'll put also the links to those in the description. So a special edition of Kabbalah Explained Simply today, and look forward to getting into it with you. We'll get into it right after this little opener. Okay, so we should just say a few words that these Nigunim, or melodies, tunes, music in general, written by Kabbalists, we have to understand who's writing these melodies. Firstly, Kabbalist. What's a Kabbalist? A Kabbalist comes from the word Kabbalah, which means receive. It's a person who has received spiritual attainment, meaning one who has risen above this corporeal world, this world that we perceive with our 5 senses, sight, smell, touch, hearing, and taste, which are all senses of reception, where our world, or this world in the wisdom of Kabbalah, marks a certain state where we just wish to receive inwardly for personal benefit alone. And when Kabbalists attain the upper spiritual world, which is above that, which is marked by an opposite quality of bestowal, giving, love, the quality which Kabbalists define as that force which is the creator. They call it the creator from in Hebrew it's called Boreh, from the words bo ure, come and see, meaning that Kabbalists define the creator through their attainment of that single force of reality that's acting at that level, which is in a continual state of love, bestowal, and just wishing to completely benefit the created being that it created. So a Kabbalist is one who enters into identification with that force, one who attains it in all of their entire being. And it's a very, very emotional experience, which is beyond the emotions that we feel in our world, because all of our emotions and everything that we perceive in our real world, it's all inwardly aimed. It's all with this intention, which Kabbalists call in order to receive, meaning for self-benefit alone. And they define that as something very tiny, very narrow, a tiny, small fragment of reality that we perceive here in this world. And that when we rise above that little fragment that we perceive egoistically, in this little egoistic shell that we're born into and raised in, then we discover this huge, a place of eternity and perfection, not a physical place, but this inner realm of eternity, perfection, wholeness, fullness, something where we feel this eternal flow of that single force of love, bestowal in its unconditional form. And that attainment, that breaking out from that tiny fragment of reality into this expanse of this spiritual reality, that defines a Kabbalist. That's what they do. And Kabbalists, once they attain that state, not all Kabbalists, but several Kabbalists, they go to great lengths to describe their attainments for us people living in this world. One of the greatest Kabbalists, or one who is renowned as the greatest Kabbalist of our current period, of our current era, who's relevant for us today, is nicknamed Baal HaSulam, which in Hebrew means master of the ladder, which comes from him writing what's called the Sulam, the ladder commentary on the book of Zohar, and he received that nickname, a respected nickname. His real name is Yehuda Ashlag, or Kabbalist Yehuda Ashlag as we call him. And he, as well as going to great lengths to explain the wisdom of Kabbalah, both in the language of Kabbalah, meaning to all those who attain those states and sensations and can work through the actual emotions and attainments that a Kabbalist attains by reading them. He also wrote texts, many essays and articles and books as well, for us people living in this world, so that we'll be able to establish ourselves with the right fundamental principles and basic concepts of the wisdom of Kabbalah, and use certain guidance and advice that he left us in order to rise from our world to the spiritual world. And Kabbalists go to great lengths to make sure that the vocabulary they use is literally perfectly adapted to the spiritual world. They even have their own language. You hear about the language of Kabbalah, the language of branches, which means that every root in the spiritual world, every causal force that exists in the spiritual world, the Kabbalists make sure that their language and every word that they use in that seemingly describes some corporeal form or image that we understand with our five senses, but they make sure that corporeal word that they have defined points directly to the spiritual root, thereby connecting us to the spiritual roots. And through that connection, we can draw the forces from that causal level of reality. Those forces act on us. It's called attracting the Or Makif in Hebrew, which literally means attracting the surrounding light. And that surrounding light works on us in order to advance us spiritually, literally, in order to bring us this higher reality of love and bestowal into our current reality, which is opposite to that, our egoistic shell. And that clash of this force that we attract to ourselves and our inner egoistic quality undergoes all kinds of processing. And through that processing, we eventually come to break through or break out of our egoistic shell, enter into that spirituality, and a lot of discernments, a lot of emotions, a lot of simply put, a lot goes on in our lives in such a process. And beyond the vocabulary and language that Kabbalists use to guide us to the spiritual world, they also write Nigunim, melodies, music. Baal HaSulam went through a period of writing a lot of music. Mostly he wrote it for his students at the time, because they were singing, they were part of a framework, a religious framework at the time. Not that Kabbalah is religion, but they also practiced in a religious framework back then, and they would sing a lot of the songs that were handed through from religion. The texts of the songs, however, were written by Kabbalists, meaning that they're written in the language of branches, and one who has attained spirituality can perceive those spiritual forces at play. And Baal HaSulam felt that the depth of the music and the melodies that were currently available in, you could say, in the religious circles, didn't reach the spiritual depth that these texts actually describe. So he went and also composed melodies which were deeper, which expressed more of the spiritual depth and the spiritual profundity of those melodies, of those nigunim, for his students to sing, and that they would be able to also experience much more depth through this singing and through this action that they did among themselves. So just like all the texts that Kabbalists leave us and everything really that Kabbalists do, it's all in order to guide us to better connect among each other, that we would discover this quality of love, bestowal, connection, the quality of the Creator, the quality of nature in its source form, that we would draw that quality which dwells there in this connection that we try to formulate among each other. So just as Kabbalists write text to us to guide us always in that direction, or to always calibrate us so that our intentions are aimed at that field of this connection between us. So likewise, his melodies were also intended for a certain purpose of connection, first and foremost, and that through the connection, his students would be able to draw those forces, the surrounding light, and experience that connection that they had at special times, such as singing and at meals, etc. When they would do this action, that they would be able to attract that surrounding light and experience a much deeper, more profound connection. And he felt that the melodies that were provided at the time weren't suitable for that. So that's why he wrote new melodies. And that's what we're going to get into right now. Just a little bit more about how music in general and Nigunim and melodies is this form that Kabbalists find suitable for expressing spiritual attainments and spirituality to us. So there's this quote by Baal HaSulam in one of his articles, The Pleasantness of Songs and Music, which goes like this: The Nigun, which is Hebrew for melody or tune, is the medium between the corporeal and the spiritual, meaning that anything that is perceived in the imagination and anything that the heart can think and contemplate, the mouth to speak and the ear to hear, are the main operators in the heart. Hence, all those discernments are corporeal, and there is not a spiritual form among them whatsoever. For were they not corporeal, they would not be felt by a corporeal being. There is no sensation in the world that does not incorporate imagination. Since the imagination is corporeal, the feeling becomes corporeal along with it. However, the sensations that are affected by the melody do not carry with them any corporeal force or imagination, except that they connect with the sensations that are already going through that created being because of imaginations, and everything is forgotten. But now, due to the law of the melody, the old sensations emerge without any similarity to what came before them. This is why there is pleasantness in them, even in sad feelings. Although at the time, meaning when they were joined with imaginations that preceded them, they were very murky. Now that the actions have been forgotten and imaginations remain in their place, and only the sensations are revealed, they are attributed more to spirituality and eternity, which is why there is great pleasantness in them without any murkiness at all, since eternity remains as pleasantness as is known. Yeah, so Baal HaSulam is explaining how the Nigun, the melody or music, is a medium between spirituality and corporeality, and through it we're able to express and discover and feel upon ourselves much more direct spiritual sensations than even what words can convey, because anything that words convey can also ignite the imagination, and even our wildest fantasies, our wildest imaginations, every imagination takes up some kind of form within the five senses, some kind of time, space, motion. It's all corporeal in some way. So this is why he's referring to melody, Nigun, as something higher than even what our imagination can grab hold of. That the moment our imagination grabs hold of something, that it starts interpreting something that comes towards it, so we're immediately materializing it. And then it's already falling into this realm of of our egoistic perception. Whereas he's saying that a melody is above that, it's higher than that. Before we start processing it in a way of imagination and materializing it, the melody itself, music, song, it's above all that. So it's something to keep in mind when we're listening to such things. Here, as well as this diagram, just showing how everything Kabbalists do, whatever they write, whether it's melodies, whether it's texts, it's all aimed at drawing these. They're all written at this higher level. Kabbalists write everything, whether it's music or texts, as we talked about the language earlier, they write at the level of attainment of that single force of love, bestowal, and connection, which is called the Creator. And from that adhesion that they have with the Creator, they write to us from there. And then us, when we're encountering these forms that Kabbalists leave us, we have the opportunity to draw those forces from there. So it's something for us to keep in mind. So yeah, as we said, this is now we're going to go into reading a few texts of these 5 long melodies of Baal HaSulam, these 5 long Nigunim. As we said, it's from this project. We're going to be launching it on the channel right after this. We're going to premiere it on the channel right after this. So you're welcome to join that, and we'll put the link in the description, in the chat. You can follow that link to already participate in the first listening party of these Nigunim, of these melodies of Baal HaSulam, Rabash, and Baal HaSulam's teacher from Pursov. But for now, we'll go into the texts of these melodies and just say a few words about them for some context. And remember as well that when we're talking about the texts of these melodies, these are very lofty texts. These are all texts written by Kabbalists who have attained spiritual levels and who write to us from those spiritual levels. They're not exactly writing to people in this world, people without spiritual attainment. These texts specifically are Kabbalists, you could say, writing to other Kabbalists, sharing those spiritual sensations that they attain among other Kabbalists. So the language is very concealed, it's very hidden. We're not here now with the purpose of trying to interpret these texts with our corporeal understanding of them. We're just going to go through these texts simply to get an impression of these spiritual levels that the Kabbalists write from. And one of the main principles to keep in mind is simply, like we just saw in this diagram, that these texts are all written at spiritual levels. They're written in the language of branches, where each word that seemingly points to some corporeal phenomenon, it's actually pointing to a spiritual root, a spiritual force, a causal force acting in reality, which has got a certain level of adhesion or equivalence of form with a creator through the person's attainment of that force. And that's what we're reading now. We're reading texts that describe this. So it should help us, because a lot of these terms that we're going to read now might ignite all kinds of corporeal imagery and all kinds of imagination in our minds, but try to keep it at a level where we rise above that. Anyone who attends the Zohar readings we do on Tuesdays should already have a bit of an approach to this, because it's similar to how we approach the reading of the Zohar. So now we're going to go through reading a few of these texts of these long melodies of Baal HaSulam. We'll put some music under them, and just to get some impression of them. So first, Azamer Beshvachin, which translates to I will sing in praises. Just a few words about it. This is based on the text of the Ari, Kabbalist Isaac Luria, who was a great Kabbalist of the 16th century. Baal HaSulam wrote the Study of the 10 Sfirot, a major 6-volume textbook, which is mostly based on the writings of the Ari. From his Tree of Life and from other texts. The Ari is said to have been the same soul, that there's this one, you could say, highest of souls that passed through the generations, and the Ari is known to have, the Ari and Baal HaSulam share that soul. It's also the same soul that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai had, and that Moses and Abraham all shared. It's a soul of a certain level of attainment, of a certain level of similarity with the Creator, of adhesion with the Creator, the highest level of adhesion, which also becomes a teacher, one who updates the method of Kabbalah for our generation. And the Ari went to great lengths to upgrade the wisdom of Kabbalah so that it would be suitable for our generation. So there's much to be said about him, but this is one of his poems that, among other things, it also became a song that was sung in religious circles too. But mainly we have to understand that this is a Kabbalist speaking about his attainment of spiritual levels and expressing those. And this song is actually talking about the entrance into Shabbat. So it's commonly sung on the Friday evening before Shabbat enters. But again, Kabbalistically speaking, we understand all these states, such as Shabbat, as inner states that we attain. Shabbat is the full final correction, a state where we enter with our attainment of spirituality, in that spirituality, the creator, the upper force of love, bestowal, and connection completely fills our vessels, fills our sensation, fills our emotions, that we have this equivalence of form with that perception and sensation of eternity and perfection and fulfillment. So that's what it means to enter Shabbat, and this is considered a song that we sing in entering Shabbat. So now we're just going to read through the text, and we'll listen to a bit of the song in the background. But ultimately, this is a song that's sung by people together. To enter into the gates of the orchard of apples, which are sacred, we shall now prepare for her a new table, and a good lamp, which shines upon our heads. Right and left, between them is the bride, who walks adorned with numbers and garments. Her husband embraces her in her foundation. He brings her comfort, breaking her trials. The cries and sorrows are abolished and ceased, but new faces and spirits with souls. Great joy will come, and for one it will be two. Light will reach her with abundant blessings. Let the groomsmen approach and make corrections, to increase provisions and fish with their whispers, to create new souls and spirits, in twos and threes, and in threes of sevens. 70 adornments for her and the King above, who crowns all with the holiest of holies, signed and sealed within all the worlds. But the Ancient of Days is not stopped. Let his will be before him, to dwell upon his people, to delight in his name with sweetness and honey. Prepare the southern lamp, the hidden one, and a table with bread set in the north. With wine in the cup and myrtle branches for the bride and groom to strengthen the weak, let us make crowns for them with precious words, with 70 adornments placed upon 50. The Shekhinah, the divinity, will be crowned with 6 kinds of bread on the side, connected with hooks and gathered provisions, ceased and forgiven, the distanced impurities, the heavy burdens, and all harmful tools. It's Azamer Beshvachin. I will sing praises, and now we're going to go to another one, which is Asader LeSeudata. I will prepare the feast. If Azamer Beshvachin was on the entrance of Shabbat, this one is considered that singing on the first meal of Shabbat morning. I will prepare the feast. The feast is a state where the created being and the creator come into this mutual connection, this mutual merger and juncture between them. It's feasts or meals. It's something very common for students of Kabbalah to gather and share in this connection. Even in this world, when we look at this world, you see how so much is built around meals, about people. There's a certain, even in that we can understand how there's a certain spiritual root of connection that takes place with meals. You know, how people, even if they want to do some important business meeting or families or everything important where there's a certain kind of connection is built around a meal. So it's similar in Kabbalistic circles too, only there, again, the goal is different. The goal is spiritual. So a meal is considered a meeting point of the whole broken soul, which comes together in this single connection, what's called the soul of Adam HaRishon, which was shattered into 600,000 parts. So the meal is all those parts coming together with that force that vitalizes them, that energizes them, the force of love, bestowal, and connection, which is called the creator or nature, the created being coming to that point where it comes all together and praises that connection with the Creator that it attains, and it's a very unifying, praising, joyous state where this connection becomes revealed among all the created being, among all the students who study, and that feast or the meal is considered the preparation for it. So when we're saying that it's the second ascent of Shabbat, or that it's the one on the second morning, it can just simply be thought of as a more conscious attainment of the Creator that it expresses. Once again, the words are by the Ari, and without further ado, we'll also read through this, just to get an impression of this loftiness that it speaks of. I will prepare the feast at the dawn of the Sabbath, and I shall now invite the ancient Holy One. Light shall dwell within it, in the great sanctification, and with good wine the soul shall rejoice. He will send us his beauty, and we shall behold his honor. And he will reveal to us his hidden secrets, whispered. He will uncover the reasons from the 12 loaves, which exist in the heavens, fragile and substantial. The bundle above, the house of all life, and the power shall increase and rise to the top. Happy are the harvesters of the field, in speech and voice, and they will speak words sweet as honey. Before the Master of the worlds, with hidden words, they will reveal sayings and declare something new, to adorn the table with a precious secret, deep and hidden, and not an empty matter. And these words will ascend to the heavens, and there who resides, isn't it that very Son? Greater shall it become, beyond the level, and he shall take his mate who had been separated. And we move on to Yedid Nefesh, beloved of the soul. This is actually a prayer song. It's written not by the Ari, but by Rabbi Elazar ben Moshe Azikri, also a Kabbalist who lived in Tzfat, a city in northern Israel between 1533 and 1600. It was a time that was full of Kabbalists. And over time, this particular poem that he wrote, Yedid Nefesh, beloved of the soul, it became more and more used as a common prayer song that was sung, as I said, also among Kabbalists, also among the religious circles. And it also came down to us. It's a song that simply expresses the person's complete devotion to the Creator. It's a song of a great devotion, selflessness, great joy, praise of having the opportunity to have that connection, to be brought to such a path and be able to have a connection with a true, eternal and whole source in one's life. And without further ado, we'll get in and read a bit of Yedid Nefesh, beloved of the soul. Beloved of the soul, compassionate Father, draw your servant to your will. Your servant will hurry like a hart, will bow before your majesty. To him your friendship will be sweeter than the dripping of the honeycomb and any taste. Majestic, beautiful radiance of the universe, my soul pines for your love. Please, O God, heal her now, showing her the pleasantness of your radiance. Then she will be strengthened and healed, and eternal gladness will be hers. All-worthy one, may your mercy be aroused, and please take pity on the son of your beloved. Because it is so very long that I have yearned intensely to see the splendor of strength. These my heart desires, and please take pity, and do not conceal yourself. Please be revealed and spread upon me, my beloved, the shelter of your peace. Illuminate the land with your glory. We shall rejoice and be glad in you. Make haste do love, for the time has come, and pardon us as in days of old. That brings us to Nigun from Pursov. Nigun from Pursov. This, first and foremost, is a Nigun, a melody, not by Baal HaSulam, not by Rabash, but by Baal HaSulam's teacher from Pursov. We simply know him as the rabbi from Pursov. We don't know his name or anything other than that. And we know of 2 melodies that came through him. This one in particular, it's very, as we said, it's one of the longest ones. It's a very epic melody. It's got a lot of depth to it. It's got no words, so there's no poem to read here about it. But it is one that even up until today in Bnei Baruch, in the Bnei Baruch Education and Research Institute, in very special occasions we sing it. Recently we had a World Kabbalah Convention. That was in September this year, 2024. And a long-time veteran student, Yitzhak Smagen, introduced this Nigun and then led a singing session of it. We don't have time to play the whole singing session because it is rather long. But we will listen to Yitzhak give an introduction to it, and I'm going to put the link to the whole cultural evening, where it was actually a cultural evening all about music in Bnei Baruch. I'm going to put the link to that below, and the link I'm going to put is also directly to the Nigun, so you can hear it being sung by people, by a lot of people. Whereas here, what you're hearing in the background, that's just a piano rendition of it, but really the full depth that comes out of it when people sing this together, and there's a lot of great depth, a lot of great range in this Nigun, and it's something quite complex. It's not a simple song, which goes for quite a while. And without further ado, let's listen to Yitzhak say a few words about it.
There is one melody, Nigun, very special and very scarce. We usually don't sing it. I don't know, in all my 25 years, remember maybe a few times that we sang it, because we sing it at very, very special moments, very internal, very intimate, very critical. It's not Rabash's melody or Nigun. It's not Nigun of Baal HaSulam. Baal HaSulam heard it from his teacher, Rabbi from Pursov. That's how this melody, Nigun, is called. Nigun of Rabbi from Pursov. And we don't even know where this Rabbi of Pursov received it. Apparently, it's a very old melody. Sorry. It's a very complex Nigun. I've never heard in my life something more exalted than that. And that's why we don't tend to use this Nigun. But apparently it is that moment of connection between us that we were awarded to sing together. It doesn't matter that you never heard it, but we now truly need to gather into one heart, into one throat, into one voice, and to simply melt like that, to lose yourself, each one, and then we might succeed.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, I'm putting the link so that you can listen to that Nigun being sung by all the students, long-time students, veteran friends of Bnei Baruch below, so you can get an impression of that in your own time. Just also put a clip here. Leading up to that very evening that we just heard from, there was a couple of lessons with Kabbalist Dr. Michael Laitman, who's the teacher here and founder at the B'nai Baruch Kabbalah Education Research Institute. So there was a couple of lessons specifically on the topic of music before that. I'm also going to put the links to those in the description below. There was a bit there which described a little bit about what Yitzhak was saying, that here's a Nigun, a melody, which comes from some very old source, which isn't really known. We understand it as coming from the Baal HaSulam's teacher from Pursov, the rabbi from Pursov, but it's even expected that it dates before that, and that the rabbi from Pursov picked it up from there. And there's a process here as well that's worth knowing, that was also asked about, and that Dr. Laitman clarified in a lesson leading up to that, of how a nigun, a melody, emerges in a certain period from a very old source, and over the generations Kabbalists sing it, and it acquires all the vessels of the different, really the soul that's coming closer to its creator all the time, and how it's this connection of these people, of these students, the connection between them, and using this nigun to further their connection. So it accumulates all that experience, the nigun, so that when it's sung at a later period, so all those vessels, all that accumulation, all that processing that took place is felt. And that's, you could say, one of the reasons why these Nigunim have such a strong spiritual force and value in them. So without further ado, let's hear Dr. Laitman talking more about this.
Why is the Nigun considered something that does connect us, does raise us? How can we connect to the place it was written from?
Even if it was written a few thousand years ago, a few hundred years ago, that Nigun went through a few vessels of people. Therefore, it received this processing through that in which they felt it, and that they were impressed by it, that they were inspired by it. Therefore, it's worthwhile for us to listen to it, that it will also help us calibrate the waves of the soul.
What attitude should we have when we listen to the melody?
Attitude. I want to feel the nigun, the melody, a certain part, a certain part of what I'm hearing, whether it's the Tehillim or something else. On what it is telling me. That's what I want to hear. Okay, that brings us to the last of these 5 of the longest melodies of Baal HaSulam. This is actually the longest out of all of them. Menatzeach al Shoshanim, to the leader upon the Lilies. Just a few words about it before we go and read its text. First of all, its text is one of the Psalms, one of the Tehillim, Psalm number 45 by King David. A few words about what does it mean, the leader upon the lilies. So we're talking about a state of a lily emerging from the thorns. We hear about this in a few different writings in the wisdom of Kabbalah, or a rose among the thorns. There's this idea of roses or lilies appearing from the thorns, similar to how a rose or a lily grows, and you have these thorns in its process. So likewise with us, a lily represents the full vessels or desires of ours, what's called the vessels and desires of Malchut, the 10th Sphira of Malchut, meaning the complete quality of reception that has the full consciousness and awareness of the Creator within that quality, meaning that we attain the full quality of love, bestowal, and connection with our full aspiration and desire, coming into equivalence of form, reaching the purpose of creation, which is adhesion with the Creator, upon all of our vessels of reception. that represents the state of a lily, and it comes among the thorns. So what does it mean? Thorns, that on our path we undergo very many discernments, doubts, confusions, dark states, all kinds of thorny states, but all those end up becoming part of creating that vessel that needs to be in place, because all in all, the process of spiritual advancement is a process of increasing our desire for spirituality, increasing those vessels. And that's done through working above all these thorny situations, as we said, all these inner states of fears, confusions, doubts, all kinds of lack of confidence that appears in our spiritual work, until it all eventually accumulates to a great prayer, a great request for that single force of love, bestowal, and connection, that force called the Creator, to lift us up above our you could say, much lower flawed quality of reception, and lift us into the spiritual realm. So without further ado, let's just get an impression, a little bit of Menatzeach al Shoshanim, to the leader upon the Lilies, by reading this psalm that it's based on, Psalm number 45. My heart is moved with a good theme. I address my verses to the King. My tongue is the pen of a ready writer. You are the most handsome of the sons of mankind. Grace is poured upon your lips, therefore God has blessed you forever. Strap your sword on your thigh, mighty one, in your splendor and majesty. And in your majesty ride on victoriously, for the cause of truth, humility, and righteousness. Let your right hand teach you awesome things. Your arrows are sharp, the peoples fall under you. Your arrows are in the heart of the king's enemies. Your throne, God, is forever and ever. The scepter of your kingdom is a scepter of justice. You have loved righteousness and hated wickedness. Therefore God, your God, has anointed you with the oil of joy above your companions. All your garments are fragrant with myrrh, aloes, and cassia. From ivory palaces, stringed instruments have made you joyful. King's daughters are among your noble women. At your right hand stands the queen in gold from Ophir. Listen, daughter, look and incline your ear. Forget your people and your father's house. Then the king will crave your beauty, because he is your Lord. Bow down to him. The daughter of Tyre will come with a gift. The wealthy among the people will seek your favor. The king's daughter is all glorious within. Her clothing is interwoven with gold. She will be brought to the king in colorful garments. The virgins, her companions who follow her, will be brought to you. They will be brought with joy and rejoicing. They will enter into the king's palace. In place of your fathers will be your sons. You shall make them princes in all the earth. I will make your name known among all the generations. Therefore the peoples will praise you forever and ever. So that's what we have time for now. Before we move on, just reminding that on the hour from now, we have a live Q&A in Kabu. So you're welcome to join that. Simply go to the Kabu live page, following the link below, and you'll be able to join that live Q&A. If you're not a Kabu member, so you'll need to get your Kabu membership. You can get a free 14-day trial toward that, and then right after signing up, just go to the live page, kabuconnect.com/live, and you'll be able to click the Zoom there to join the live Q&A. And that's about it for now. Just before we head off, I'll just read one more excerpt, which, as we said, what we're going to do now as well.
Why is...
Oops, sorry about that. What we're going to do now is we're going to head into a listening party of the premiere of this complete set of Nigunim, the melodies of Baal HaSulam, Rabash, and Baal HaSulam's teacher from Pursov. just follow the link in the description, in the chat. You'll see it there, a link which is titled Kabbalah Music, the Melodies of Baal HaSulam, Rabash, and Baal HaSulam's teacher from Pursov. So that's just going to be the complete set that's just been released in piano arrangements. We'll be posting a few, if you're going to be watching the premiere, so we'll be posting a few questions there as workshop questions from our Kabbalah.info account there during the session, so you can either just use those to reset your intention toward the listening experience, or you can answer them there in the chat if you so wish and socialize. So that's that. So enjoy that, and that'll be there to stay if you want to return on that later. And just so we head out with some preparation toward listening to these Nigunim, let's go out with this excerpt by Rabash that we'll just read now. And also we'll watch a clip of, again, Kabbalist Dr. Michael Laitman speaking from a recent lesson about Kabbalistic music, where he talks about how these Nigunim help us in our spiritual advancement. So first the excerpt, this is by Rabash. What is a lily among the thorns in the work? It's from that article. Why they must sing to the Creator and thank Him. Does the Creator need flesh and blood to thank Him? The answer is that the created beings should know that all they have is what the Creator gave them in order to thereby achieve the love of the Creator. Through love of the Creator, they will always be in dvekut, adhesion with the Creator. Okay, thank you everyone. Until next time.
What's the spiritual advancement we can get from the song? We can actually advance from the information, the text in the song.
Progress, your advancement can be very significant because you rise above from the corporeal interpretation to connection. It could be spiritual connection. And that gives you a great addition in attainment.